All right, everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva. And the show is syndicated as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. And, of course, you can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. We're continuing the conversation with Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. And, Ze'ev, before the break, you were talking about Israel being a democracy. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that concept?
Well, Israel's very identity as a quote-unquote Jewish democracy is hotly contested, and there's no consensus on what Israel actually is as a country. Is it Jewish? Is it a democracy? What does it mean to be Jewish? To what extent is the role of religious law apply in Israel as far as democracy? How do we deal with very vocal outbursts by certain minority politicians that basically are openly supporting the dismantling of the state. It's the very essence of the principal essence of the state of Israel and the principles that it's founded on are always contested.
Okay, so it's always a bit of a balancing act because there are Orthodox Jews that say, even though I'm Orthodox and I keep Shabbat, I don't want to tell someone they have to keep Shabbat. So in that respect, I'd like the stores to be open. On the other hand, I don't want to see the stores open from a religious perspective. So that's certainly a balancing act people are trying to work out in this country. Now, let's talk about possible solutions.
My brother says, he doesn't keep Shabbat. He says, if someone puts up a barricade obstructing my freedom of travel with my small child to go to a park somewhere, for instance, on Shabbat, then I'm going to run over that barricade. Under no circumstances of my dead body is anyone going to deprive me of that right. And that's certainly a valid perspective. And then there are the people who want to see Israel growing as a Jewish state with Jewish laws and Jewish values, who say that, if you want just to live like anyone else in a secular democracy, do it elsewhere. So these are kind of the two of the competing voices.
Right, because you see in areas, for example, Mea Shearim, they put up the barricade, no one goes back by the barricade. I mean, and that works very well for that neighborhood. There's no one that has any businesses open on Shabbat. And so if people adopt that... Well,
and it works because there's a consensus within the community that's essentially homogenous, that any car that drives to it is going to be met with people on the street making the car stop and occasionally even throwing stones, although,
that's very rare.
Lamentable as that practice is, I don't think it reflects the entire sector that lives there.
The media tries to make it like
there's de facto. It's de facto based on the neighborhood. It's not even. I don't know how the lawmaking goes at the level of the city council as far as which neighborhoods get closed down on Shabbat or not. But there is some element of de facto communal consensus as far as which neighborhoods you can drive to on Shabbat and which not.
Again, this is a Prophecy on Israel National Radio. We're going to continue the conversation with Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. Ze'ev, we were talking about the first half, how there's a troubling situation where a woman wants to get a divorce, she's not able to. I understand one possible solution to deal with it is the prenup. A prenup before they get married, that's what a prenup is, but a halakha prenup. Tell us what exactly that is and how that would fix the problem.
Halakhic prenup would carry halakhic and legal binding power that would allow a woman, a Jewish woman in a Jewish marriage in the state of Israel, to be able to circumvent her halakhic inability to unilaterally divorce the man. It basically enables her to be granted a divorce. And there are some, while it's a workaround, and perhaps an effective one in some cases, people have pointed out that, there are a lot of men who are perfectly willing to go to jail for refusing a get, which, by the way, there is the legal mechanism for a recalcitrant husband to be sent to jail, which happens very often in Israel, for refusing to grant his wife a divorce. And the argument by those who say that a prenup is not enough is that if a man is already willing to go to jail, then he's perfectly willing to violate the prenup and go to jail for violating that. And people who say that will insist that the actual halacha itself be changed such that a woman can be granted a divorce even if it's without her husband's consent.
Okay, and before we continue on, I want to talk about certain ways this has been handled up until now. First, let's start in the United States. There is a concept called Get Buster. People don't like to necessarily talk about it, but this is my show, so we'll do it. What exactly is a Get Buster, Zev, and why is it used in the Jewish world?
Get Buster is a group of usually men who in the guise of community action will go to the home of a recalcitrant husband who refuses to grant his wife a divorce and do anything from entering and warning the man to forcibly entering and warning the man to breaking his property, to destroying his property, to actually physically assaulting the man himself. Actually, there were a number of arrests made against members of a ring that was doing this in America, right. Where civil law very strictly prevents the violation of personal property and body. In Israel, the courts tolerate it to a much larger extent, from what I understand. I personally happen to think that it's a despicable practice, and it's basically it speaks volumes about how woefully inadequate the current application of halacha is in dealing with these cases. And there's a principle expressed by the Rambam and others that by Maimonides and other commentators that essentially what this roughing up, this intimidation, and sometimes physical violence against the man do is enable him to see the error in his ways, and that he's not going to grant his wife a get against his will, which may invalidate the granting legally, but that he actually suddenly realizes after years and years of going through intimidation, harassment, and possibly even jail, will suddenly decide that, he realizes that what he's doing is wrong. I think that's insulting to anyone's intelligence.
This was a big rabbi that said that. But this was a big rabbi who said it. So
I'm sorry?
But this was a big rabbi that said that, right? So how do you go the two intellectual...
This is a very big rabbi. This is the biggest halachic authority in the last 1,000 years who said this. It doesn't mean that everything that he says is correct. If our sages of 1,000 years, if our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, were capable of error, and Moses, the greatest prophet in the history of the Jewish people, who wrote the Torah down, if that same Torah took pains to point out the human failings and the errors of all of our greatest leaders, whose magnitude we're not even capable of perceiving, then certainly someone like Maimonides could also make a mistake in his ruling, and we don't follow all of his rulings. Jewish law is largely based on consensus, and I think if there was strong enough consensus about the issues of divorce and women's rights, then there might actually be some movement to change the existing laws.
The thing is, though, you seem in particular very upset by that Maimonides saying that it would insult someone's intelligence. So my question is to you, as a practicing Jew, it'd be one thing if someone makes a mistake. Moshe hits the rock when he shouldn't have. But this is an intellectual exercise and understanding the Rambam has over marriage and divorce. how could he be that wrong? Because that's a pretty wrong thing. If the guy doesn't really want to give a divorce and Robin says, no, he really does, then that means he was really wrong intellectually. So how do you therefore say he's a Torah giant and he got everything down but was so wrong intellectually on this matter?
Well, again, people make mistakes. I don't know what was going through his mind. I don't know what experience he draws this kind of reasoning on. I just don't know. I'm at a loss to understand it, and I so far have not heard a good explanation. But I think most people confronted with this kind of scenario would agree that a truly recalcitrant husband is not going to magically realize the error of his ways from being beaten. And I think the rate of recidivism and the revolving door in prisons today is proof of that. People, not only do people not seem to learn their lesson from punishment, but they're willing to endure years more of imprisonment. So I don't see how, in my whole experience with the way that people behave, it doesn't seem like a halakhically valid form of obtaining permission for divorce from a husband.
All right. Anyone out there, by the way, wants to give an explanation to that Rambam, again, email is messiahhour@gmail.com. We're happy to talk about that on a future episode because we do want to hear an explanation if there was one out there. I know people try to explain it, but something to Zev's liking, you can send that to me, and I'll pass it on to Zev. I want to talk about the religious way of dealing with someone who doesn't give a get in the Cherem aspect, meaning they excommunicate them, they don't allow them in synagogue or to be part of a minyan at all, or they have different levels. Some will let them in the minyan but not give them a aliyah, whatever. Can you talk a bit about that concept and if you feel that is all effective?
Well, you've covered the basic options, not being allowed in a minyan, not being allowed in aliyah, meaning going up to read from the Torah on the Torah reading days, including Shabbat, and it can range from relatively minor things, technical things like that that do have some kind of symbolic weight, to complete ostracism by the community that used to be practiced with relatively dire consequences back in times of the Jewish ghettos in Europe, for instance, or small isolated settlements that the Jews lived in throughout the diaspora, where being cut off from your community being basically cut off from Jewish life altogether. In Israel, there's always a different community you can go to, so it doesn't have the same effect. And I think that's a perfectly valid way of trying to get the message across. I think, in fact, that the fact that it's that cherem, this ostracism, is not, it's still leaving the person with a choice, because they're not the same kind of duress as they are under physical intimidation, where they fear for their body and their property in their own home. That this allows them the opportunity to refuse if they. It gives them more of a choice to refuse and to, if they do choose to grant the writ of divorce, to do so genuinely as an act of free will rather than one of coercion, one that results from coercion.
Again, this is a prophecy on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour Ari Louis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're continuing the conversation with Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. Zev, going back to the case of Rivki Stein, why was this such a polarized, I don't know if polarized is the right word, but this case got a lot of attention. So tell the audience a little more detail about the case and why it's been among a lot of people's discussion in recent days.
Well, we're talking about a woman who has been unable to remarry, who lives in a state of of imprisonment as far as their personal life goes. And I think one of the reasons it's gotten the attention it has is the behavior of the husband in court, that and the energy that the husband and husband's lawyers are willing to invest in trying to make their case. I think a lot of the reason for this becoming such a high-profile case is just because both parties refuse to give up. And the court, from what I've read, the court seems to be leaning in favor of the wife. And actually, the judge censured the husband for his behavior, for smirking, and she told him that this is not a laughing matter. Someone who smirks when he sees his wife crying on the witness stand is it's not inconceivable that such a man can beat his wife without regretting it, as she claims he's done, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest he has.
All right, and part of the reason that we did this episode is because there is a Facebook group called I'm Also Fed Up with the Way Women Are Treated in Orthodoxy, and before we wrap up this GET discussion, I want to know your thoughts in general of the way women are treated in Orthodoxy. I'm also a member of this group. Do you see a change in the next few years? Is that something that's possible, and how much of a change do we need?
Well, I see a growing voice, especially among younger women who feel empowered both through shifting societal values and also through technologies like Facebook to protest the way things are. I think that there are also many communities where women, either because they accept the status quo, or they're used to it, or they just it's not in their frame of reference to even really make us think about it, who don't do so. I think groups like this can be effective in raising consciousness, but I think that these groups also need to focus on action. One of these groups, I actually suggested making a march, staging a march, and gathering people together for a rally in Jerusalem in front of the rabbinate, the Supreme Court, the religious high court, for change in marriage laws. But it seems like a lot of these groups are focused more on discussing and debating the issue rather than action. And I think that action is where these things need to lead.
And if people want to do that, because I did see your post and that it got a lot of feedback, Lori Lai, Nadia Levine, etc. If they really want to do that, they contact you through Facebook, or what's the best way they can contact you about it?
Yeah, certainly. ZE'EV space BEN space I should say dash YECHIEL. I know there are a lot of tricks in my name, but I'm pretty visible on Facebook. So
right.
Yeah.
Facebook and Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. And a few minutes we have left. What would this do if there is a protest talking about in front of the Rabbinut building in Jerusalem, talking about the current application halacha should be changed? Can this really do something? There was a big enough protest with the Rabbinut really listen to it.
Well, I think that there's a political dynamic here as well, political factor, which is who holds the strings over the rabbinical courts, the central rabbinical courts, and a lot of these people, a lot of people have influence our local community rabbis, and I would say that the power is tilted in favor of the Haredi communities, specifically those communities that don't see a lot of the protests, where the women are not encouraged to speak up about this. And I think that that's the direction that this kind of activism is to take. Now, these communities are also very sensitive to what they perceive as outsiders going in and trying to muck around and stir up trouble in their communities. And I think that the best way to go about making changes is to basically quietly provide, reach out and make contacts and provide women with the chance to get together and support this kind of cause. And in the end, in these kind of communities, the husband often still has a considerable amount of power in his favor over the wife as far as discussing this issue with the rabbis. And I think that until that changes, it could be very difficult. But I think there are plenty of husbands, even within the ultra-Orthodox communities, that are willing to listen to their wives and are willing to go to the rabbis and say, listen, this is a real issue, and we need to deal with it. The problem is, in fact, I'm not sure if there are that many husbands that are willing to actually speak up and stand up to their rabbis and make these kinds of demands. I certainly not say that their husbands are willing to listen to their wives, and that's the point of what can be perceived as defying, God forbid, their leaders. It's a very top-down system in the ultra-Orthodox world. So I think that these are some of the forces that we have to contend with when trying to make the changes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening again. This is today's episode of Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio. And my guest this afternoon has been writer, commentator, and former correspondent of several Israeli news organizations, Ze'ev Ben Yechiel. You can find him on Facebook if you're interested in staging a protest outside of the Rabbanut regarding how the application of halakha deals with divorce and marriage, etc. You can find him and try to set that up. And a couple announcements before we end the program. Again, I'm on JApp. That's a Jewish application that has shiurim of big rabbis as well as episodes of this program. You can download JApp from iTunes or from Google Play stores or from the website www.j-app.me. And, of course, you can find this show on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. Tell your friends and family about it, because the more subscriptions I have for the YouTube channel, the higher the show will be in YouTube ranks and more people will listen. Any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, it is a Jewish country after all, email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. If you'd like to make a financial contribution to this program, you can do so through my PayPal account at israelsportsradio@yahoo.com. And of course, I want to thank our guest, Ze'ev Ben Yechiel, for being on the program. Ze'ev, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and an honor.
All right, that's today's episode of Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio. Have a great day and be well.